she said with her classless makeup. I mean, I did hear the rumors. He replied, but this is worse than the rumors. Lady Deborah thought, ha. And her outfit is so crude that it just pains me to see her. She looked and glanced. She came in front of him. He asked from her, what do you want? She picked him from neck and he said, he shouted and thought, my goodness. How could she do such a thing? He said her, I mean, Lady Deborah, explain yourself. Lady Deborah replied, my hand slipped. Night picked her, and she thought, oh, would you look at that? This time, my wrist slipped. A shocking scene for sensitive nobles. Lady Deborah shocked and said, why are you doing this to me, Lady Deborah? My hand keeps slipping. Lies of all that grease on your face. Figure it out for yourself. Lady Deborah slightly smiled and said, I suggest you wipe your face more often from now on. You're a scumbag who cheats on his wife with her maid, and you even pushed your pregnant wife down the stairs and broke her leg. Lady Deborah go on and thought, oh dear. What did I just see? She thought, who invited that ridiculous woman to the party? Go ahead, talk all you want. There's nothing you can do about me. Anyway. Lady Deborah take a glass and shouted and thought, who would dare to challenge me, the daughter of Duke Seymour? Viscountess Ripley, said her. Lady Deborah. She glanced her. Viscountess Ripley's lot, and said her, there's something I'd like to tell you. Viscountess Ripley's thought, I can't stand this anymore. I'd better give her a piece of my mind. Viscountess Ripley's. Deborah said her. Speak. Viscountess Ripley's. Viscountess Ripley's went and said her, don't drink too much, Lady Deborah. It's not good for your health. You know what I mean, right? Deborah looked surprised and said her, gosh, and I got so anxious because she came over to say something. Lady Deborah drinked and thought, but there was no reason to be scared at all. Unlike the infamous Deborah Seymour, Lady Deborah shouted and thought, I'm extremely timid. What she actually thought earlier, yeah, I don't have to feel sorry about him. He's deserves it. Wipe your face. But I won't get intimidated. I won't live like the naive fool I used to be in the past. Lady Deborah holding a fan in her hand and shocked, and thought, I'm gonna enjoy the sweet life like the villainess I am. I won't let them find out that I was basically a dormatil. That's right. I used to let people walk all over me. Do he read a massage? Do he? I need 100,001, and I need it now. My aunt suddenly passed away, and I'm so sad right now. Do he? Tears poured out, and she said, poor Hanjuan. Do he replied him, I just sent it. Cheer up, Hanjun. Hanjuan said her, I'm really sorry. I'll return it the moment I get some money. You're an angel, Do he. Do he thought, but how come it feels like he has a death in the family every week? Do he read the massage that he said? Automated message from Oil Bank. Transferred 100,001 from Do Hee Yoon to Han Jun Kim balance 3,101. She thought, by the way, why is nobody replying in the group chat? It's been some time already. While she went, did you do the assignment? Do Hee said, hey guys. Please send me your summaries for the team project by today. He replied, sorry, Do Hee. I'm down with a fever, sad face. I have reserve army training today. Can I send it tomorrow? I'm sorry, Do Hee. My mom is sick today. I promise to help next time. Do Hee thought reserve army training, additional periodic military training for Korean males who have already finished their 2-year mandatory service. Looks like I'll have to go to the library again. Do Hee entered the home and said, I'm starving. And sleepy. Maybe I should get some triangle kimbap. Bank balance 3,101. Triangle kimbap. Triangular kimbap. Usually the cheapest food available. Hanjuan said, stop stepping on my new shoes, man. He replied, hey, isn't that one of those rare limited edition pairs? He also said him, yeah. I even had to add some money on top to get it. He asked there was some fierce competition out there, you know. Do Hee shouted and thought, Hanjuan? Isn't he supposed to be at the funeral? What is he doing here? But you're broke. Where did you get the money? Hanjuan said him, I found myself a doormat. Asked Yun Do you want one too? Ha ha. Other asked Yun Do Hee? Do Hee shocked and thought, oh, I get it. That makes sense. Do Hee also thought that what's a doormat? And how Lou the other guy recognized my name as, does everybo know me as a pushover? Hanjuan similed and asked Dojin. I heard having her around for team projects is like a life hack. She does all the work, but does she give money too? Dojin replied yeah, and all I had to do was act like my relatives died every week. Dohi walked and thought, wow, you're using her like an ATM. I know, right? If there was a competition for being a pushover, I bet she'd be the national champion. Dohi looked him and thought, Dohi, you're such a nice person. I like that. I'm not that nice, Dohi shouted and said Hui. Yoon Dohi. When are you coming home? Dohi called and asked why. Someone needs to do the dishes and set the table for Dojin. I'm going out tonight. Can't Dojin set his own table? What are you saying? Can't you even do that for your one and only brother? Dohi shouted and said why? Are his hands too precious to set his own table? Why do I have to keep looking after him when he's already all grown up? And Moem said, are you serious? Moen also said her. Dohi, you're such a nice person. What they really meant was, Dohi lets me walk all over her so I can have an easy life. Dohi thought, I wish I had realized that sooner. But why is it that the most important realizations in life only happen right before you die? And that's how I died and fell into, they thought, an R-rated dark reverse harem novel called A Dark Thorn Through My Throat. Lady Deborah thought, as its villainess, Deborah Seymour. Lady Deborah waked up and she surprised and thought, where am I? I remember I was hit by a motorcycle. Lady Deborah rised and thought, but I don't even have a single scratch, a mirror. I need a mirror. Lady Deborah looked her in the mirror and thought, whoa. And said, she's so pretty. Lady Deborah shouted and said, wait, that's not the point. How come I'm not waking up? Lady Deborah said, isn't this supposed to be a dream? That hurt. Servant dropped everything. Lady Deborah picked her, and she shouted and said, I'm so sorry, my lady. Please forgive me. Please. I swear I didn't see anything. Lady Deborah shouted and asked from her, what's wrong with her? Servant said her, please have mercy. Lady Deborah. Lady Deborah thought, Deborah? Why does the name sound so familiar? She shocked and thought, oh, I remember. A Dark Thorn Through My Throat, that's the name of the villainess in the novel I bought. She was a hardcore villainess created by the author for the sole purpose of making the female lead miserable. Mento. Hate comments about Deborah always got the most likes, because she did something evil in every episode, that eventually got her tragically locked up in a monastery. Lady Deborah also looked strange and thought. She was as pale as snow, and her eyes crimson like blood. She wore her violet hair down like. Now that I think about it, I look exactly like the novel's description of her. Could it be? Servant asked, what is the commotion about? She thought that man is Deborah's father, Georges Seymour. Georges Seymour thought he was considered to be one of the 5 most gifted mages in the entire history of the Seymour family, a man whose disposition was just as cold as his looks. The only person he had ever opened his heart to was his wife, Marianne Seymour, but she died giving birth to their last child, Enrique. Her death made George's heart grow colder than ever. But the important part is this. Lady Deborah thought, you fool. Not only did you starve yourself in protest, you've also resorted to self-harm. He thought, you're an embarrassment to House Seymour. It was that he completely despised. Deborah. His daughter. Or me. Georges Seymour said, her daughter. You may look like Marianne, but you're acting like a complete fool. Deborah looked and said, over nothing but a leaseless gem. A gem? Lady Deborah shouted and thought, oh, that's right. There was a one-of-a-kind gem in the Empire. The pink diamond. I must have thrown a tantrum over the diamond, and starved myself in protest. No wonder I felt so hungry. Georges Seymour said, her, my mercy has limits, even for my delighter. This is your final warning. You're not to step a foot outside this manor. Stop causing trouble and start behaving. Lady Deborah shocked and thought, how could a man of his age be so good-looking? I mean, how could a father be so scary? Servant said, her, I apologize, my lady. Servant shouted and said, I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. Please have mercy. Servant, weeping and thought, I know this is a dark novel with no human rights whatsoever, but this isn't the introduction I wanted. Servant clean and said, I get it, so just get out. Thank you. Thank you so much, my lady. Lady Deborah thought and said, wow, this is insane. I lived my whole life as a doormat, but I wasn't reborn as the female lead, or even her friend. Lady Deborah also said loud sound they just had to make me the villainess. But why her? Why Deborah, of all the possible characters? She also thought you. We're done washing your face, my lady. Servant, hold the plates, and said maybe being a villainess is not so bad. It's been 10 days since I was reborn as Deborah. They thought life as a villainess, with the worst reputation and the most evil background possible. Lady Deborah sat at the table and looked the different dishes and thought, wasn't so bad. Lady Deborah said it's good. Lady Deborah glared and thought, wow. Look how well trained they are. I guess I was extremely hard to please. Lady Deborah take a piece of bread and putted the jam and thought, well, it doesn't matter. At least it works for me. Maybe it's even for the better. Would you like more, my lady? She said no. Get out. She thought it's uncomfortable to have people watching me as I eat. Yes, my lady. Lady Deborah glanced and thought it's obviously better to be a picky villainess than a pushover. I just have to follow Deborah's instincts, and people get out of my way. I've never had any of these luxuries in all 24 years of my life. I can't believe I can have such a relaxing and peaceful morning. She sleep on the bed and said, hey, can you dry your hair in the bathroom? She locked and said her life was a disaster. I couldn't even dream of luxuries like this. Lady Deborah glad and thought, well, if this is what it means to be grounded, I'd love to be grounded for the rest of my life. Tremendously. Smiled and said a moment later, I'm tremendously honored to meet you in person. Lady Deborah. Tremendously came and said her, I'm Helen, the second delighter of Baron Giotto, and a dress designer by trade. Lady Deborah looked her and thought when she was sit on the sofa, I can't go out since I'm confined here. But it doesn't matter because I can simply call a designer over. Lady Deborah thought, talk about being born with a silver spoon in my mouth, or should I say, a diamond spoon? They feed me, wash me, and dress me. I don't even have to lift a finger. Tremendously, said her culture shocked. Please excuse us for a moment. What's all that? Lady Deborah looked them surprised and thought, look at all those lavish presses. My room just turned into an exclusive VIP showroom. They all are gathered in diamond jewelry boxes in front of her. She thought, I'm most honored and delighted to present to you our dresses. He smiled and thought, why isn't she saying anything? Maybe she doesn't like them. Shortly before he became Deborah. Servant glad and said, you make a dress for me. Oh, I'm sorry, Lady Deborah. We're all booked for the season, so are you turning me down? I'll have them made and pay you a visit. It was only 3 weeks ago that she barged into my shop and threatened me. He smiled and touched the dress and said, oh, Lady Deborah. This dress is all the rage lately. Lady Deborah's strange and thought, who knows what she might do if she doesn't find something she likes. The white fur on the sleeves makes the dress stand out even more. Would you like to take a closer look? Lady Deborah looked the dress and said, wow, I love it. It's so fancy. Is this what it means to be born with a diamond spoon in one's mouth? And with a face like this, anything would look amazing on me. She's keeping her mouth shut to avoid sounding like a tool. Tremendously came to her and said, what do you think, Lady Deborah? Deborah became angry and thought, oh, no. The fur makes me want to sneeze. No, I have to hold it in. Tremendously glad and said, oh, Lady Deborah. These dresses are only a small collection of our current works. Deborah thought, if you give us 3 more days, we promise to bring you even fancier and trendier dresses. Lady Deborah turned and looked and thought, what? There's more? I thought this was more than enough. Trying not to sneeze. Tremendously shouted and said her no. In fact, we'll change them here to suit your tastes and be right back. Also said at as many jewels as you can. Make them fancy. She said, yes, madam. Lady Deborah shouted and said, phew, that was close. They would be seen right through me if I had sneezed. Yeah, jewels are the best, since I can always have them exchanged for cash. Lady Deborah looked her in mirror and said, looks really are everything. I just have to open my eyes wide to look really intimidating. Lady Deborah glad and said, I love this face. Lady Deborah also happy and thought, I used to look so plain and innocent. Miss, I can see you have many worries in life. that people would stop me on the streets every 50 meters. Asterisk typical poaching phrases used by cult groups in Korea. Lady Deborah suddenly looked again and shouted, but now, they'll never come anywhere within a 100-meter radius. Servnet said her, please excuse me, my lady. Lady Deborah turned and looked her. She said, your tutor is waiting. Lady Deborah shocked and said, what? A tutor? She walked and thought, why, this house is so big. When will I ever get there? Lady Deborah thought, I wonder how much wealth and manpower they used to build this place. Wow. Deborah lived in a huge manor like this, and she even had a tutor. I'm kinda jealous. I couldn't even pay for my online classes. Lady Deborah also smiled and thought, But Deborah skipped classes all the time and never did her homework. In fact, she hung her tutor upside down just because he scolded her for not doing the homework. Loading Deborah's memories. Why do I keep finding horror stories every time I look into her memories? With an environment like this, she should have lived without a single worry in her life. Hold on. Now that I think about it, Lady Deborah looked shocked and thought people around me might have a hard time, but that means I'd have it easier than anybody. Just had an epiphany after living 24 years as a pushover. And there's no reason why I should let people walk all over me here. I could keep being Valik Seymour. Said, geez. This man, Valik Seymour. Said, it's you? Is the second son of the family, Valik Seymour. She thought, in every generation of the Seymour family, its heirs are born as twins. Each born with the potential to lead. The highly talented twins are fated to compete against each other in a fierce battle to become the head of the family. And that's probably why most of the Seymour twins turn out to be sociopaths. Valik Seymour. Said Deborah, news of your idiocy continues to reach me at the Mage Tower. Valik Seymour. Said her, now, Patrick is a scholar I personally care about, so I suggest you behave today. Valik Seymour picked her hands and thought, idiocy? Speak for yourself. You're just as ridiculous. In fact, you'll even kidnap and lock up Mia Binoche, the female lead of the novel. Well, Deborah might have thrown a fit the moment she heard her heartless brother say those words. But I'm not Deborah. Besides, this is hardly insulting, compared to how my family used to treat me. But most importantly, both Valik and the firstborn, Rosard, work day and night to become the head of the Seymour family. Meanwhile, I'm living the life because I've been grounded. Lady Deborah looked happy and thought, and it's all thanks to you. Lady Deborah came then. He said, greetings. Lady Deborah. She thought he must be Patrick, the man Valik mentioned. Valik Seymour looked her and said, then. Oh, let's get started. The Astaya Empire has 4 noble houses whose powers are second only to that of the imperial family. Seymour, the house of magic; Montez, the house of elementals; Argo, the house of the sword; Visconti, the house of gold. These are the 4 families. Lady Deborah thought and looked surprised. Of the 4, the Seymour family was given the right to oversee the Mage Tower by the 1st emperor for strengthening his reign, and the tradition has continued on for the last 500 years. Merges Seymour, the first head of the family, helped the 1st emperor and the goddess establish the empire. Therefore, he is considered one of the empire's founders. The history lesson on the Seymour family made something clear to me. My father is a duke and the master of the Mage Tower, while the forefather of the family was an 8th-class mage and one of the empire's founders. Lady Deborah shouted and strange and thought, that means I can do anything here and still get away with it because I'm a direct descendant of the Seymour family. I wasn't born with a diamond spoon in my mouth. I must have been born with a super rare orichalcum spoon. Lady Deborah thought, but wait. Then what could Deborah have possibly done to meet a tragic end like that? Lady Deborah looked the hall and thought, annex in the Seymour Manor Magic Training Hall. The last class of the day is Theory on Magic Circles. Tremendously said her, hello, my lady. Deborah looked strange and thought, they removed any objects that can be thrown. Well, that makes sense. After all, I hurled my way through too many magic tutors. T shouted and said, what? Did you say I'm unable to sense mana? Are you kidding me? Deborah looked, shouted and said, I'm a Seymour. Maybe you're the ones who are too dumb and unworthy to teach me. Deborah smiled and thought, I'm sorry. Dear victims of the past. But how come I don't have any talent in magic? Don't people usually get magic or swordsmanship skills when they fall into a novel? Deborah looked at him and thought, and the Seymours are supposed to have a high affinity with mana, too. TGIZUKENV6 the twins A with circumflex sorry all gifted mages. Or do I have a debuff because I'm a villainess? No, that's not it. I've got the looks, the money. And a lineage to boot. I'd say I've got it all. She said her Lady Deborah, if you don't mind, may I start the lesson? She's acting strange today, and that's even more frightening. Please come this way. Oh, no, you shouldn't step on, she can't hear her. Deborah became a villainess because she tormented people out of her sense of inferiority. But I have no reason to do that. That means people won't hold any grudges against me. Lady Deborah looked surprised and thought I in the novel, the main characters who have powers constantly suffer from the jealousy and sabotage of the people around them. In other words, I already have all the conditions to keep enjoying this peaceful life. Not bad. Lady Deborah. Lady Deborah swim and the servants care her. Lady Deborah eat a sweets ABD thought it tastes good. One of the 77 Master Confectioner's limited edition macarons. Servants thought at first. I couldn't get used to how attentive they were in serving me. Servants said her the life. Si Chians, how do you like the temperature, my lady? Lady Deborah smiled and said it's not bad. Lady Deborah eat and thought I wish I could live like this forever. But to do that, I'll have to alter Deborah's fate in the novel. First of all, the biggest reason that Deborah got locked away in a monastery was because she messed with Mia Binoche, the female lead. She slapped her, pulled her hair, and even laced her drink with hydrochloric acid. She did all kinds of things. Crown Prince picked a doll and thought you the tipping point came in the form of a voodoo pole. The Crown Prince was one of the male leads interested in MIA, and he used the voodoo doll as an excuse to arrest Deborah on charges of sacrilege. She thought in the Empire, the saint was held in greater regard than the emperor or the nobles. Therefore, the fact that Deborah bullied Mia, who was viewed as the reincarnation of Saint Nayla, wasn't taken lightly. Deborah's life was spared since she belonged to one of the founding families of the Empire, but she was immediately put to trial and sent to a monastery. Servants looked her no. I don't want to end up like that. Never. She thought so. The key to having a comfortable life is not to mess with the female lead. The good news is that I'm still at the first chapter of the novel, meaning Deborah hasn't met Mia yet. How did the first chapter go again? A dark thorn through my throat. Began. She came toward the Crown Prince, with another love interest, Pilav, getting wounded by a demonic monster, and falling in love with Mia, who saves his life. Lord Pilav said her, you saved my life. How can I ever repay you for what you've done for me? She looked him and replied, I only did what I ought to do. She said her, my only wish is your speedy recovery. Lord Pilav. He looked strange and thought, Miss Mia. Lord Pilav sit in the office and said her it will be Mia's birthday soon. What should I get her to make her happy? Servant came and said him, my lord, there is word that the first colored diamond in the Empire will be put up for election. The diamond is said to be pink, just like the color of the saint's hair. Mis Lia strange and thought that's the one. Yes. That was the root of it all about the pink diamond. The reason for my misery. I end the story. The price of the diamond shot through the roof, and having no help from her father, Deborah lost the jewel right before her eyes. Pilav finally won the pink diamond and gave it to Mia, which was how the tragedy began. Completely unaware of what had happened, Mia wore the pink diamond to the academy. Miss Mia smiled and thought, and that was when. And it doesn't help that Deborah liked Pilav since she was little. Deborah thought, no wonder why she did that. Anyway, here's a list of the things I must not do. 1. Don't beat up the female lead. 2. Take no interest in the pink diamond. And that's about it. That's a piece of cake. Surviving as Yundohi in my past life was much harder than that. Well, I'm still gonna give it my best. I'll live a carefree, lavish life. My lady. You're still wet. You'll catch a cold. And I won't let anyone take it from me. Then the first thing I've got to do is to win over the source of my power, Duke Seymour. Phew, it's finally done. Guildmaster said it's finally done. The second diamond has been made. What a magnificent color it is. Master. Master looked and said, I'm sure this one will attract a great demand. As well. He asked, do you really think so, Vice Guildmaster? He said him, I recall you weren't too fond of my research. Yes, I'd be lying if I said I was. Master thought I did think it was quite odd to research something like that. When he started making colored diamonds. I didn't think there would ever be a demand for it. But he got agents to find information on the woman Pallav Montez was said to be in love with. Then he used alchemy to create a diamond with her hair color, and spread rumors about a rare item in the capital. Deborah thought a diamond with colors. Does such a thing exist? It's true. They say it will appear at the next auction. It's the only colored diamond in the entire world. But I heard Lord Pallav has his eyes set on it, to give it to the saint for her birthday. He's trying really hard, isn't he? Deborah said. A pink diamond? He smiled and said, I was worried people might not be interested in something that had never been on the market. Master also said it seems to have sparked a competition among the noble families. They say the pink diamond will reach an astronomical value. It's all going according to your plan, Master. And who do you think will win the bid? Vice Guildmaster? I've served the master in the Blanchard Guild for quite some time. But I still can't tell what he's thinking. I believe it will be Pallav Montez. And why is that? Deborah Seymour has long since lost the favor of Duke Seymour. Master also thought when a lion looked him, and from what I understand, she was even grounded after throwing a tantrum over the diamond. Yes, I think Pallav Montez will end up winning it as well. There's nothing Deborah Seymour can do. Duke Seymour's read a paper, and he shouted, without the help of Duke Seymour. Duke Seymour's thought Deborah has been too quiet. That girl's vanity knows no equal. And yet, she has barely bought anything at all. Something is suspicious. She starved and even hurt herself to ask me for that stupid jewel. He also thought that insolent girl. How could she hold her own life hostage to threaten her own father? Well, let's see how far she can go, because I won't let her have her way. He shouted and said, Duke Seymour's, why, Your Grace. Duke Seymour's looked him and said, what is it? Was it so hard to knock? He asked Lady Deborah. Duke Seymour's looked strange and thought, is digging out her Grace's rose garden with a shovel. Duke Seymour's became angry and said, what? Duke Seymour's go fast and very angry, that fool. How dare she vent her anger on my wife's flower garden? It's only been a few days since her punishment. And she's already causing trouble. Duke Seymour's shouted and said, Deborah, what have you done to this place? Deborah turned and looked and said, oh, you're here. Oh, you're here, darling. Duke Seymour said her, what do you think? He also asked, you're doing here? Deborah replied, I was taking a walk, and looking at the roses. I was looking at the roses, dear. Deborah said, after all, they're not supposed to be in bloom during winter. Duke Seymour's thought, don't tell me. Is she trying to sound like her mother? Because she knows I'll get mad at her? Duke Seymour's thought and said, what a wicked and malicious thing to do. What brought this sudden interest in flowers? Duke Seymour's also said her, I thought jewels were all you cared about. Deborah asked, how are these flowers any different from diamonds? He said her, what do you mean by that? She thought these flowers are preserved by a spell. They have no fragrance, and they never wither. Likewise, diamonds never change through the ages. Lady Deborah said so. I don't see how they're any different. Duke Seymour said her jewels are mere things that would satisfy your vanity. Lady Deborah thought, so how could you claim they're no different from the flowers your mother tended to? These aren't the kinds of things she grew. He thought what makes flowers beautiful is the fact that they wither in winter, just to return in full bloom during spring. Is it not? Duke Seymour said her, so you decided to come up with ridiculous excuses instead of taking responsibility for what you did. Lady Deborah said him, they're not excuses. Duke Seymour's looked strange. Those are the words Mother wrote herself. That's the paper Marianne always wrote her letters on, my darling Georges Seymour. Duke Seymour's asked while he read a paper, but what makes flowers so beautiful is the fact that they wither in winter, just to return in full bloom during spring. Duke Seymour said, where did you find this? Lady Deborah smiled and said, I found it right here, Father. Lady Deborah looked her hands and said, phew. Lady Deborah thought I was scared to death. What would have happened if I hadn't found the letter? Why is he so terrifying? He's supposed to be my father. Duke Seymour's looked angry and thought, I can't believe I had to risk my life just to hand him a letter, and it's all because of how spoiled and horrible Deborah was. She looked strange and thought, at least I remembered everything about this part of the novel. That really helped. The Duchess's letter was supposed to be found by Mia Binoche, the female lead. After the Seymour twins kidnapped Mia, Rosard brought her to the rose garden by force. He picked her from her rest, and she said, Lord Rosard, please don't do this. Lord said her this garden and all the jewels can be yours if you just say you'll be with me. But why won't you do it? He asked. Are you foolish? Or are you aggravating me on purpose? Deborah looked and thought, what's that? Later that evening, Mia secretly dug in the flower garden and found a box of the late Duchess's letters. She then used the box to make a deal with the Duke and escaped from the sadistic twins. Deborah also thought, but can I really take this legendary item? I do have my share of troubles, but the letters played a key part in moving the plot forward. Deborah shouted and thought, oh, well, I'm sorry, female lead. In exchange, I'll make sure my crazy twin brothers never kidnap you. I kinda need those letters to survive. She thought, but that's strange. In the novel, Mia only used the Duchess's letters to negotiate with the Duke. Then why didn't she use the diary? He said her, my lady. He asked her, did anything happen in there? Duke Seymour's aide. Deborah turned and replied, not really. But I have a question to ask you. Duke Seymour's was in the offing and read a ladder. The garden in winter is full of bare branches. And that made me realize something. The fact that flowers wither. Yes, the reason why they are even more dazzling and beautiful when they bloom. He said, if I hadn't cast a spell over the flower garden, I would have found your letter in the process of turning the withered flowers and soil over. Father looked outside from the window and said, Marianne, the letter was too short. He said, come in. She smiled and said, please excuse me, Father. He asked, what are you doing here? Deborah laughed and said, I heard you've been working too hard lately. I'm not scared. I'm not scared. He's the man with the wallet. And that means. So, I brought you some tea and sweets. Father thought I'd better impress him. And, since when did you ever care about my workload? She thought, he's so cold yet so cool. He said them. I mean, this guy has 4 grown-up kids. He said, well? Why are you standing there like a fool? Take a seat. Deborah thought he didn't send me out. He said her, I'll leave you now, my lady. Come on. I told him I won't cause any trouble. What time does my father usually feel tired? He has tea between tea and? In the morning, my lady. But his grace is most tired at that hour, so you must never get on his nerves. He gave some fruits and thought you must be hungry. Why don't you try this with your tea? Deborah also said, when he having tea, it's a lemon tart from the most popular bakery in Ione's district these days. Deborah smiled and thought the Duke isn't very fond of sweets. But I read in the diary that he always had lemon tarts whenever he went on dates with the Duchess. That's why I got him that. Duke Seymour said her, it's too late for sweets. It will only upset my stomach. She said, but you'll like this one. They having breakfast, and thought, does he like it? Did it work? There must be a reason why you came to me at this hour. Duke Seymour's strange and said her, are you here to collect a reward for finding the letter? Deborah thought, of course. What you found is priceless. Duke Seymour's looked shocked and said her, but if you're here for the diamond, I suggest you go back to your room. Deborah smiled and said, I never go back on my word. I didn't come here to demand anything. In fact, I'm here to give you something. He opened a ladder and said, it's another letter. Do you mean to say there were more of them? Yes. How many letters are there? She said, you'll find out in time. Duke Seymour's asked, are you using your mother's letters as a bargaining chip for the diamond? Deborah said, I wouldn't do anything so petty. Man, talk about impatient. I mean to give them to you one at a time, because you'd feel sad once you're done with them and have nothing left to read. She smiled and said, please. I hope this works. Anyway, it's late. I'd better turn in. Father. She thought, I need a stretch since I've been sitting down for too long. I'd better go for a walk. Duke Seymour's and Deborah thought, well, why are you just standing there? Follow me, you. Yes, Father. The tea is quite strong, so you won't be able to sleep if you drink too much of it. I'll tell them to steep something milder or make hot chocolate instead next time. Next time? Wait, is he actually worried about me? One more thing. We should talk more often. Duke Seymour's sit on the sofa and read a letter. She thought, for some reason, I feel like I've become a messenger. Here's your love letter _delivery. He's so busy obsessing over his wife that he barely even notices me. Duke Seymour shouted while having tea and thought, come on. I handed him 2 letters this week already. It's about time I saw some changes, right? He said, Deborah. Are you intentionally bringing these letters to me when I'm tired? Deborah replied, Yes, I am. Duke Seymour said her, Why? Is it for that one-of-a-kind diamond? Deborah shouted and thought, This is my chance to impress. Because I'm your daughter, as well as mother's. I wanted to serve as the link between the two of you. He read a letter and said, Do you have time this weekend? She said him, Yes, I do. Duke Seymour's looked her and said, Then let's go out for a meal. She asked, But what about my punishment? Duke Seymour's thought, You must have learned your lesson by now, and you've been behaving lately, too. Deborah said him, Yes, father. Thank you. Duke Seymour's said her, How odd. You don't seem as delighted as I expected. Deborah glad and thought, He's quick to catch on. Well, that's because I've been loafing off in this amazing manner, and I can't be happier for it. Deborah smiled and said, Being grounded is the best. Oh, no. I'm so glad, father. Honestly, there's no place like home. Deborah said, But I realize that staying home and having tea with you can be just as delightful. What is it that you want from me? Duke Seymour said her, You're scaring me now. Just be honest if you're after something. Deborah said and shouted, I'm not after anything. Did I go overboard? She said, Your Grace, everyone is waiting in the meeting hall. He asked, Is it time already? Deborah smiled and said, Since you're busy, I won't keep you. He's strange and said, See you on the weekend, father. Deborah go away and thought, Man, I'm so drained. Deborah shouted and thought, It's so hard to win brownie points from my cold father. And it's so hard not to be intimidated when I'm alone with him. At least I'm not grounded anymore. That's probably a good sign. Deborah ran and thought, Today, I'm going to do absolutely nothing at all. Duke Seymour said her, Even the way you walk speaks volumes about you. Master came and said, How crude and hopeless you are. She looked strange and thought, When did he get here? He said her, You should stop stirring up trouble and stay put. Otherwise, it wouldn't serve as a proper punishment. Don't you think? Deborah shouted and thought, Why the hell does that jerk keep trying to pick a fight with me? The promised weekend. She having breakfast and thought, Whoa. It's so yummy. Their food is so good, but why aren't there any customers? It's the peak hour. Too. He asked her, What is it? She replied, The place doesn't seem to be too popular. He said to her, That was a rather unamusing joke. Deborah thought he must have booked the entire place. Wow. The super rich just rolled differently. He said her, Deborah, do you have any letters for me today? Deborah replied, Yes, I do. He said her, You're right. Having to wait for the letters does give me joy and makes me look forward to it every time. He asked, Is this what you intended as well? She smiled and thought, Of course. I'm glad to hear that it made you happy. Humans are sly by nature. They easily forget feelings of appreciation, so they need to be constantly reminded of what they should be grateful for. But today, I wanted to hand you the letter in a different way. Duke Seymour said her, A different way? Deborah replied, Yes. Can you spare me some time after the meal? Lately, spending time with Deborah has become my top priority. Before, I spent every single day doing nothing but work with my cold and distant sons. Duke Seymour's thought each day was a grueling struggle. But now, Duke Seymour said, Of course. Deborah said, Father, can you close your eyes? Duke Seymour said her, Close my eyes? Lady Deborah said him, Remember how I said it will be different? I'll read the letter to you today. Duke Seymour smiled and said her, Ha, are you telling me you're into theater now? She said and thought, I never knew there was such an interesting side to you. And I didn't know he could laugh. She asked him, Please close your eyes first. Speculise, you have to focus. Duke Seymour's replied, Yes, yes. Lady Deborah thought. When you're not around, and the coldness pains my heart, that poem I shall sing within the fragrance. Was it called My Heart is a White Flower? She asked, How was it? Duke Seymour said her, It's definitely something Marianne would have liked. Duke Seymour's looked strange and said, Reading the poem and writing could be nice, but it was much better because you read it too. He said, Darling. Deborah smiled and said, I'm reading a poem by Lance Schubert at the moment. He happens to be my favorite poet these days. When I read his poem and closed my eyes, I can almost smell the gentle fragrance of the white flower lingering in my nose. And whenever that happens, I think of you. The poem wasn't written here. Did she look for the poem mentioned in the letter, so she could read it to me? Deborah said, How did you like the letter today? He thought, Did you enjoy it? He thought, If I had read the letter without hearing the poem first. Yes, I did. I would have never felt like this. Duke Seymour said, Why does Deborah keep going in and out of my father's office? and I heard father agreed to lift her punishment. Knight said his grace's servants won't talk, so it's hard to find what the reason is, my lord. Master said, but they will take notice if we start poking around. How annoying. He said her something's not right. Deborah went and I thought Deborah would get kicked out once and for all when I heard she had dug up our mother's flower garden. But instead of getting severely punished, she's having tea with father every day. He said I don't understand my father at all. Deborah is the shame of the Seymour family. If I were him, I would have kicked her out ages ago. He thought, no, I guess it doesn't matter. She'll be wed and gone right after her debutante in the autumn. Who was the groom Rosard fallen for her? Was it Louis Gazelle? That's just perfect. Those two classless fools would make a great pair. I'll have to support Rosard's plan this time. He said you won't be here for much longer. Deborah. Deborah asked, is anyone talking about me behind my back? Deborah said what do you want? He asked, what do I want? She said, you're beneath me. What would I ever want from you? Oh wow, how nice of you to say that. Deborah asked, why don't you go on your way if you've got nothing to say? He smiled and said well, I guess I could give you a piece of advice as your brother. She thought, no, thanks. He said I heard you caused quite the commotion over a gem. Deborah shouted and thought, I really don't need your advice. Look at you. You're vain, crude, and you cause trouble everywhere you go. Who would ever want you? Can you just cut the nonsense and move on? I really don't care. He looked her and thought, and that's why you should thank me. You're dumb, and you have no talent for magic. All you have is youth and that face of yours. But I took it upon myself to find you a suitable partner. Deborah looked strange and thought, what's wrong with this crazy bastard? What the hell are you talking about? He said it seems you need to relearn your manners. Otherwise you'll taint the good reputation of our family. Deborah said I asked you, what is this about? Master said Louis Gazelle. You'll see him soon, so remember the name. Deborah shouted and thought, Lovey Gazelle? Wasn't he the cheeky pervert who kept hitting on the female lead? May I have a moment of your time? Who said you could arrange that? Master said if you had ever done anything right, I would have never needed to do this. Deborah said, well, that's gonna change, so mind your own business. And if you're that concerned, just give me money instead. He turned and looked her and said, ha. I doubt it. You have no record of doing anything right. Are you that delusional? Do you really think Pallav Montez would want to marry you? Snap out of it. Didn't you hear the rumors that he's in love with someone else? Deborah said, look, I'm not interested in him at all, okay? What a terrible jerk. I can't believe you'd bring up your sister's crush. He said do you really think the Montez family would accept you? Given your record, no family as reputable as House Seymour would ever accept you. He said so. The Argo or Visconti families will never take Louis Gazelle. Said I'm not gonna get married. Deborah shouted and said, what? I reject the notion of marriage. I reject what? Marriage. Can't you hear me, dumbass? He said well, that wasn't a very funny joke. Deborah said that wasn't a joke. He said Deborah, I suggest you learn how to refrain from muttering nonsense. Do you mean to say you voluntarily refused to carry out the duty of a noble lady? Why? Are you entering the monastery? He said don't ever say that to anyone outside the family. You're already a disgrace to the Seymour name. But this is just ridiculous. He smiled and said Louis Gazelle is more than good enough for you. Deborah said I'm sure you'll come to thank me later. He said let's talk again sometime. Deborah shouted and said whatever, sociopath. Why the hell is he doing something I never asked for anyway? But it's true. According to the laws of the Astaya Empire, all noble ladies must get married once they come of age. And since Deborah turns 19 this year, Deborah shouted and said according to the law, she has to get married right after her debutante. This is bad. I can't believe there was such a horrible rule in the novel. I knew these was going all too well. I had to suffer because of a jerk named Kim Hunjuin, and I absolutely don't want to date again. But are you saying I have to marry a perverted jerk this time? Over my dead body? He thought I'm the Puke's daughter, but Valik is a potential heir of the family. So, his words carry far more weight. At this rate. She said, hey you. Come here. Servant said, I am sorry, my lady, She said her let me ask you something. Servant weeping and said pardon? Deborah said what happens when a noble lady refuses a marriage, arranged by her family. Servant said her I'm so curious that it's driving me mad. But that has never happened before. Deborah said her then use your imagination. Servant said her then. The noble lady will no longer be able to use her surname. She'll be stripped of all her titles and cast out of high society. She could even end up in a monastery. Deborah thought what? I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, my lady. That's ridiculous. Then this is no different from the novel's original ending. So, that's why Valik was so shocked earlier. He wasn't joking about the monastery. Deborah said, but that's odd. Are you sure nobody has ever rejected a marriage before? What if the family arranges a marriage with someone they don't like? Servant shocked and said her oh, now that you mention it. Servant said there was a noble lady who fell in love with a commoner mercenary and ran away. See, there's always an exception to everything. Deborah said her tell me more. Servant said but I heard it worked out because the lady earned herself a title, thanks to her major achievements in battle. She was a 6th class mage, and her husband was a mercenary captain. Deborah surprised and said she earned a title in war. Servant said yes, my lady. Deborah thought so. If I want to have things my way, I'll have to go out to war and seize a land to rule over. Can't control mana skills anims on no other character perks, but that's practically impossible for me. Then I'll use my money to buy myself a title. Where are you going, my lady? Now, I know what I should do. But I could never afford a title with what I have. I can't even afford the lowest title of a baroness. If only I had more time, since people usually get married between the ages of 19 to 22. I could theoretically push the marriage off for a while and save enough money to buy myself a title in the next 2 to 3 years. I might even be able to delay the marriage slightly longer since I'm still studying at the academy. Then, how do I earn that money? She see come in. Who'd visit me at such a late hour? Duke said Deborah. Let's have a little chat. She shocked and said father, / She thought why is he here? He can't be here to talk about marriage, right? Deborah said I'll give you another letter before you leave. Father. Duke said her I'm not here for the letters. I came to ask you what you'd like. Deborah said him pardon? I'd like to get you something you want. Duke thought what's going on here? Father, all I want is for you to let me read you the letters when the white flowers bloom and the snow falls. Translation. Please don't kick me out of the manor and let me stay here for a long time. He said her yes, I understand you wish to be the bridge between Marianne and me, and that you mean it. But the look on your face says otherwise. Did I sound too obvious? I'm not here to test that notion. So, feel free to tell me what you'd like. He shouted and thought if I keep refusing his offer, he might think I'm suspicious. Well, Deborah said him then could I ask for an investment? It's for my business. Duke said what? Are you trying to start a business? Deborah said yes. I have a business idea I'd like to try out. He said her that's unexpected. I was sure she'd ask for the pink diamond. What made her think of something like that? He also said her doubter fine. How much do you need? He thought I think this much would do. He thought and shouted how would she start a business with this meager sum? Did she forget to add a zero? She replied her dad I see. I'll give you the amount of gold you asked for. Thank you, father. He went and thought why does she suddenly want to start a business? What exactly is she up to? Hold on, she also surprised and thought could it be that she came up with an alternative solution to get the pink diamond because I said I wouldn't give it to Hersey already told all of House Seymour's vassals that I won't be buying Deborah the diamond. So she must have thought it would undermine my credibility as the head of the family if I went back on my word. She was trying to help me uphold my reputation any authority while also making me feel better by intentionally asking for a ridiculously small amount of moan. Yes, it all makes sense now. Misunderstanding #1 Deborah shocked and thought that's why she was so deep in thought. I did notice how maturely she's been behaving lately. Duke Seymour thought to think that she's trying so hard. She's all grown up. Misunderstanding number 2 as her father, I should give her trust when she's trying to grow out of her childish ways. He said I have an order for you. Yes, your grace. Duke also said I don't care how much it will cost me. Do everything you can to win that pink diamond at the election. Deborah read a ladder and thought a few days later. What is this doing here? But Palav was supposed to have won the bid. My dear Deborah, I truly appreciate your concern for me, but I can't bear the thought of returning the precious letters you gave me with nothing more than spare change. A father ought not to turn a blind eye to the wishes of his daughter, which is why Deborah shouted and said spare change. What I got was easily over 40 million Korean won. Should I have asked him for 100 million won instead? And what concern is he talking about? She also said I did one nice thing after an entire life of villainy. But I still got complimented for it. She glad and said it sure is nice being a villainess. She thought as though I always let people have their way. And yet, they still criticized me whenever I refused them once in a while. She held a diamond and said I should have never lived like that. Deborah looked and smiled. Well, Ike really is gorgeous. But if I go about with this around my neck, Palav might try to stab me. She thought I wish I could sell it and simply keep the money. But my father would definitely find out if it ever appears at an election again. Deborah shocked and thought how dare she refuse my goodwill. Her expectation never again will I do anything nice for her. Deborah said I'll figure out what to do with this later. Deborah shouted and smiled and said more importantly, I got some seed money. Person who has been enslaved to the capitalist system for 24 years. I got 4 million won. Running my own business might give me a legitimate reason to postpone the marriage, and I might actually make some money if I can run my business right. All I need is a good idea and someone to help me. Deborah looked strange and said, That's Master. Congratulations. The pink diamond was sold at the highest price. Master put his hand on lion and said how much was it sold for? I've listed the details in the report, Master. He said while read a paper. Duke Seymour won the bid. I thought the diamond would certainly end up in Mia Benocha's hands through Palav Montes. But most importantly, the winning bid was much higher than I expected. All my predictions turned out to be wrong. Deborah thought didn't underestimate Deborah Seymour? I thought Duke Seymour had completely given up on her. He said Gerard. Master said didn't I tell you to pay more attention to the higher ranking nobility? He replied I apologize. Tell our informant in the Seymour family to do thorough research on Deborah once again. He also said yes, Master. What did I miss? For some reason, I have a strange feeling about this. Master, you have a client. Master thought a client. Let them in. Deborah Seymour. Lady Deborah thought what is Deborah Seymour doing here? So, I finally end up here. Master thought the seventh Fong of the Golden Pragon. This is the lair of the Blanchard Guild, which served as the Crown Prince's cheat code in the story. Master thought so. This man is the most competent and the most mysterious figure in the novel. Anyway, this is how a supporting character like myself got to meet this overpowered character. He saw a ladder and thought a week ago Deborah fell down and thought a cat with a raised tail. This is the seal used by the Guildmaster of Blanchard in the novel. Master thought the master of the Blanchard Guild had a unique trait of using various seals according to his mood. Deborah thought, and this happens to be the seal he uses when he's particularly pleased. If I remember it right, the seal appeared in the chapter where the Crown Prince had his victorious moment. Master said I noticed how Deborah Seymour keeps bullying MIA. Crown Prince said her I'd like to get rid of that evil woman. But it's not so easy. Beckelise she's a Seymour. The Crown Prince notable traits. Asks the Master of Blanchard for help with every problem. He said if you find a way to get rid of her, I'll give you what you want. Deborah thought the Master of Blanchard then started a rumor about a way to put curses on one's enemies, luring Deborah to make contact with a sorcerer. Completely unaware of the fact that she had walked into a trap, Deborah got a voodoo doll made. A voodoo doll, you say? He said how should I make use of this? Why can't he connect the dots? Crown thought it simple. You could charge her for blasphemy. Crown said yes. Crown Prince said not even the mighty Seymour family can challenge the holiness and authority of a saint. I knew you'd have a solution. Here. This is what I'm paying you for this job. Take a look. He also said I'm giving you the land you asked for. I added some money on top as well. I'm sure you'll like it. Thanks to you, I can finally put her on trial. Crown said I've never seen you use the cat seal before. Master said I was starting to think that was just an ornament. I save it for the most satisfying contracts. Crown said so, the seal you use for special occasions has a cat on it. I never knew you were the soft type. Master smiled and said the seal was made using my dear cat as a model. Don't you think they look alike? Crown Prince said I also didn't know you were capable of making jokes. But why is the cat portrayed with its tail pointing upward? The answer will cost you 10 gold, Master said, but I'll only charge 9 gold and 99 silver coins since I'm in a good mood. Deborah shocked and thought it's a special discount for you, Your Highness. Oh, forget it. The Master of Blanchard was the reason why the Crown Prince became the most prominent among Mia's suitors. He was so incompetent, but he did have a useful tool. Thanks to that, he always came first place in the popularity votes. The Crown Prince would have been nothing without Blanchard's master. Deborah looked surprised and thought, wait a minute. She thought there's no reason why I shouldn't be able to use the Crown Prince's key man. She said what Deborah needs the most is someone she can trust. Has nobody around her due to all the mean things she's done. But what if I join forces with Blanchard's master? Deborah looked him and glad and said he is a competent man who'll get anything done for money, and all I have is money. We could make quite a fabulous pair. Deborah read a ladder and shocked. If only I can get the master to help me. A week later, at the Atra district, is this area still being developed? She also thought when the buildings are laid out nicely, so the place will look quite pretty once everything is built. This is the kind of property you want to invest in. Illa keep this neighborhood in mind. Architect Majorh said we've arrived, my lady. She entered the home. I have no memory of this place, which means the shop isn't well known yet. But they will become the most famous jewelers in the capital, because the famous pink diamond will be sold right here for the first time. In other words, it will get popular very soon. Welcome to Diana Jewelers. Servants thought I have something to ask about the pink diamond. Get me your manager. Whoa, it's Lady Deborah herself. Lady Deborah? Servant said Lady Deborah, thank you so much for visiting our shop. She thought, please let me guide you inside. She said, no. I'm here for. I have to say the secret phrase quietly, so only the manager hears it, the Fong. Pardon? I'm here to trade with the 7th Fong of the Golden Dragon. He shouted and thought UGH. It's so cringy to say. She smiled and thought I will lead you to the Golden Dragon, my lady. I give up. To be honest, I had no idea this jewelry shop was directly involved with Blanchard. Back to the present. Master thought I got really lucky. I can believe it, Lady Deborah. I never imagined I'd receive a visit from you. Lady Deborah smiled and thought while she saw a lion calm down. Relax. I must not look weak. I won't act like a doormat ever again, Deborah said. She looked the lion and thought I almost screamed, OW. Its tongue feels rough. I'm glad they have catnip in this universe, too. HA, why don't you take a seat, Lady Deborah? He said, get over here. Cookie. She shouted and thought, what an adorable name. Come here. He asked, what exactly did you do to Cookie, Lady Deborah? She thought I shouldn't show him that I'm intimidated. I even practiced my cold gaze for this occasion. Well, that will cost you 99 gold coins. Deborah also said I should be charging you 100, but I'll give you a special discount since I'm here to make a request as a client. She thought I expected him to be slim and skinny since he's an information dealer, but his shoulders are really broad. In fact, he seems to have a bigger frame than most knights. He also looks younger than I thought. He's good with magic, too. Master smiled and asked, who is he? Master said, I swear, you're the first client who has ever aroused my curiosity, Lady Deborah. But as an information dealer, I shouldn't have acted like that. I apologize. She shouted and thought, act cold. Act cold. Act cold. Act cold. Act cold. Act cold. Trying not to break character. He smiled and thought, so, what business brings you here today? He said, my first order of business concerns Louis Gazelle. I want information about him. He also said Louis Gazelle is the first son of a lord who owns land in the region of the western border. But something worth noting, he asked, is. That his family amassed one of the largest amounts of wealth lately due to the discovery of multiple silver mines in the western region last year. What? She's shocked and thought the western region? The Duchy of Seymour and the capital are both located on the east side of the empire. That means Valik is trying to isolate me somewhere very far away, so that I'll never come back to the Seymour family. She shouted, that's an marriage. This is practically banishment. Valik! You're such a %, $@ and %. She said, I'm not going down without a fight. I'm not asking for generic information. He said, I want to know his weakness. If you're looking for a weakness you could exploit, she thought and looked surprised. So, he wants the money up front. Deborah looked the diamond and said, I hope you understand this is only the beginning. He thought first impressions are everything. Deborah said, if you show me how competent you are, it'll show you how deep my pockets are. Crown Princess said, if you have to pay someone, you might as well sound generous about it. Look at all that money I'm paying. Aren't you glad? So you'll keep helping me, right? Do you know what to went through to get you that land? Getting petty and sounding cheap like the Crown Prince will only leave a bad impression. She shouted and thought, well, how's that? Better than the Crown Prince, right? Wouldn't you rather work for me? You've shown me your appreciation of my skills, Master said her, so I should return the favor. All right, thanks, Crown Prince. Crown said, everybody has a skeleton in their closet if you look hard enough. Deborah thought, but I'm sure I won't even have to look that hard to find dirt on Louis Gazelle. Look at that grin on his face. I bet he'd even create dirt if he can't find any. He must have made that grin when he used his scheme to get Deborah sent to the monastery in the novel. Crown locked and thought he'd make a terrifying enemy, but if he's on my side, he'd be a very reliable ally. Deborah asked, here's the second task. Can titles be bolite? Crown said her, of course. Money can even buy sincerity, so why not a title, and the price? It depends on the title, so it could be quite expensive. After all, the notion of becoming a noble is desirable to all. She thought, darn it. I'd idea as much, but that's true. I can't be the only one who wants to buy a title here. Deborah said, I want to know the average selling price for the title of a baron. The title of a lower-ranked noble, he said her, will cost about this. She shouted and said, what? This is 10 billion ***. I thought it'd cost about $1 billion *** at most. How am I ever going to earn that much? He shouted and thought it might have been impossible for me in my past life, but it's not completely out of reach anymore. 10 billion? Balance, 3,101 ***. Because I was born with an orichalcum spoon in my mouth, Deborah thought, I will never marry that pervert. Well, it's not. At all. Yes, it must be nothing more than loose change for you, since your necklace alone costs an entire manor in the capital, Lady Deborah. That's not true at all. She said, that brings us to my third request. I considered not selling it for the Duke's sake, but I have no choice. She thought, and said, titles are way too expensive. I'd like to sell the pink diamond. Crown said, what? Crown said, but I thought you starved yourself in protest, and were even Grolanded Beckeleyes of the diamond. Why are you trying to sell it back? Deborah said, you're very unbecoming of an information dealer. She also said, if you want to ask questions, pay me the same amount in gems. Then I'll give you your answer. He smiled and said her, I seem to have forgotten my place again. Let me apologize once more. She thought, phew, he doesn't look offended. Intimidated. He may be the master of Blanchard, but I'm the daughter of Duke Seymour. What is he going to do about that? Which means she's bluffing with her daddy's title. I just have to make sure he doesn't find out how much of a coward I am. Once he notices that, he'll try to rob me of everything I have. Squeak! No, I can't give you this. Give me your money! Crown locked and said, I assume you're trying to sell the pink diamond without letting Duke Seymour know, am I right? She said, yes. But the diamond is already well known among the nobles. If it comes up in an election again, it will start a rumor. Deborah thought, but I don't know a way to sell it without disappointing the Duke. Yes, that's what I wanted to hear. She asked, and what method is that? He said her 50-50. She strange and said, what? Are you asking me to split the profits after selling the pink diamond? Crown said her, I'm glad you understand my language very well, Lady Deborah. Deborah glad and said, WH, what the hell? What a thieving bastard!